Welcome to our learning session. Today, we'll be talking about how we can analyze the dataset provided by World Bank. This dataset has many variables for different countries. This dataset is about fertility rate for women for different years or different ages of years of the woman from 15 to 19 specifically. We'll be using R to analyze the dataset and see what we can infer from that. Now let's begin. First of all, we need to import the required libraries, and then we need to set the working directory. And thirdly, we need to import a dataset. First of all, we'll remove any unnecessary data from our memory. There will be ls equal to ls. Secondly, we need to import the required libraries. Library IDverse. Let's run this and see what we get. We have loaded the required tidyverse in the data in the memory. Now we need to start with assigning the correct working directory for our project or for our session. Let's run this again. We did that. Now, thirdly, we need to import a dataset from the disk to the memory. And for that, we will write as table. We'll import dataset as a table. Table is a data frame in the tidyverse, and it is more advanced than a table in a base R. Gender stats data, that's what the name of the file is. We'll simply import it. Now let's run this. This is what we have here. Next step. Now, next question is question number 2. Here, we need to profile the data. How do we profile the data? Do you know? We can profile the data using certain functions. For example, we can use dim to understand number of rows and number of columns. We can use str to understand the different distribution of sample values across all the columns, and we can use head and tail to see what are the sample data at the start of the table and end of the table. Let's start with the dim. Let's start with dim and do gender data and see what's the dimension of its data. Okay, we have around 140,000 rows and 63 columns. This is a large data set. Secondly, we need to see what are the sample values distribution of its data across different columns. STR is a really useful function to analyze and profile the data, and it shows that there are 140,000 columns and 60 rows. For country name, some sample values are Arab world, Arab world, Arab world, country code ARB, ARB, ARB. Indicator is access to antiviral drugs, female percentage, access to antiviral drugs, male percentage. Those are some sample values in this column. Indicator is CHR, SHI, HIV, HRT is Fez. There are lots of values here. Those are variables in the data. Next, we can look at some header data using head. Let's see. This is the header data we have, and some sample data is X1991. This is sample data. First 6 rows, Arab world ARB, and last is Zimbabwe. There is the indicator name, women who own land jointly. These are some values for indicator name. Moving on to question number 3. Now we're going to somehow filter this data to only get a data set that contains adolescent fertility rate indicator for each country per year. How do you do this? Do you have some idea? Let me show you. In table, there is something called filter dataset. Filter, filter filters the data or filters the rows based on certain condition. And in this case, we are filtering the gender data. And the condition we are using is indicator code, indicator.code equal to something. And what is that thing we are interested in? It is SP ADO TRFT. That's the value we are looking for in this indicator code column. That's it's one of the column in the data set. And let's run this. And we have some rows here for this. Now what we need to do is we need to assign this data set to a variable that is teenager FR. Teenager filter. That's what it means. Now let's run this again. Now we have a new variable that we can use later. Next, question number 4. Question number 4 states that we are not interested in a large data set, that is the gender data, so we need to get rid of it. How do you do that? Let me show you. There's some function called rm, remove function, and we need to parameterize gender data inside it such that it removes from memory, and we'll do exactly that. Now if we call this dataset, there won't be any values here. Let me quickly summarize what we learned today. We learned about analyzing a data set from World Bank for fertility rate. We started by importing the data set. Then we did profiling of data using DIM, STR, head and tail. And then we use a filter function to filter the data for adolescent fertility rate and store that into a variable. And lastly, we remove the bigger data set, the unfiltered raw data set, such that it won't take any space in the memory. That's all for today. I'll see you next learning session. Thank you so much.